it's a juxtaposition, right? Because you don't want to be so going with the flow that you don't have any structure, but at the same time, you don't want to be so structured that you miss the flow and creativity of life. It just was me following my curiosity. It was just me letting go to the moment. If I had said, I'm only reaching out to guests at this time or that time, I might have missed that opportunity. Because
like you seem to really be intrinsically enjoying doing your podcast, right? It seems to really speak to your soul, and you can really tell that it's like this word passion is so overused these days, but like it seems to be like almost like your, this Japanese word ikigai, like your entire reason for being seems to like, center around the podcast. And it's like you almost leveraging and scaling I'm going real meta here, but like your love for like people into the podcast,
That's 100% accurate. And that's how I've approached it. And that's like the reason why I started the podcast was because I had these phone conversations with people who told me, I love this phone conversation. And then I said, oh man, I wish I could give this to other people. And, I didn't love people forever. It was only once I started meditating that I really started loving people and loving myself, really, because loving other people stems from loving yourself first. So, I just, the love for people stems from me loving myself and wanting to bring that love that I have for myself to other people as much as I can. So it's exciting for me to be able to do. You hit the nail on the head though. You perfectly encapsulated why I do the podcast, because I love people, because I want people to feel that love in their heart and that I have in my heart. And I want them to feel it as well. And I was trying to do that by writing for a long time, but it wasn't capturing the essence of my voice. It wasn't capturing the essence of my love. And it turned out that audio or maybe video too is a better medium to express that truth.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And it's just like, I'm just looking, like preparing in preparation for this interview. Obviously, I've been going through your stuff and on your website and, like past podcast recordings. And I just like, I see so many things that you're doing or that you've been doing, whether it's like meditating every day. By the way, are you still meditating every day for an hour?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I haven't stopped. It's a key habit for me. Like, I don't understand how I was going on Twitter before starting to meditate. I don't understand how I was like actually operating, if that makes sense. Like I just see things through such a different lens after I meditate in a day versus not. And my mom called it out to me the other day, like a couple of weeks back. I had it meditated and she was like, you seem like you're on edge or something. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't meditated today. I forgot. So it's like, it really makes a difference for me personally, maybe not for everyone, but for me, I notice a difference in how much I'm willing to extend love to someone else, in how much I'm comfortable with myself. It's just like giving myself that time to clear through all the issues in my head. Cause apparently I have a lot.
You do it first thing in the morning?
First thing in the morning, 60 minutes, just sit down, thoughts, let them go through you. You do that long enough, you start to go to a place of nothingness, and it feels like going to the therapist every day. It feels unfair, like getting a weight off your shoulders, clearing your inbox of what's on your head. It's really important for me.
Yeah, that mental inbox zero, right?
Exactly. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I get that too. And I've been like the one annoying guy in your social circle that goes around and tells everyone to meditate. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back and forth on this, right? Like I am so in favor of like telling people to meditate. I'm also so in favor of like just letting the action speak for themselves. And if someone says like, oh, what's interesting about this guy? Why is he kinder? Why is he more empathetic? Why is he full of love? Why is he feeling this way and doing these things? And then they look deeper into it. Then they say, oh, wow, it's because he's meditating. And if they draw that connection themselves, then that will get them on the path. So sometimes your actions can speak louder than words. But I also am a proponent and tell people to meditate because it really has been the most transformational thing in my life. How did you start meditating?
I started originally like 5 years ago or maybe 6 years ago with Headspace. The app.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did like the entire library, the entire catalog of meditations. Um,
Wow.
that probably took me like, I don't know, 2 years or something.
But I'm sure you felt pretty good after the 2
Oh
years.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And then I really wanted more. I really wanted to like up my, sounds wrong to say up my game because like it's meditation, right?
Yeah. So what'd you
um
do?
yeah, and then um I just started meditating for like 45 minutes, an hour every day, just like without any app or without any soundtrack, nothing, just like
Yeah.
total stillness. And that was like 10 times harder all of a sudden. Yeah.
How was that? What'd you learn from doing the longer sessions? Obviously you
How
learned a bunch, but like if you could sum it
yeah.
up in one bullet point or two bullet points, what were like the top learnings you took from the longer sessions?
I would say like how much mental clutter I have going on and how I really do need this 1 hour, sometimes even two, to be honest. But like, I'm like, I don't want to do 2 hours, to really like get out the bad stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um, which for me is like, I'm like full of like all kinds of like irrational thoughts and, fears and anger. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, it just all has to come out. Um, and yeah, you're right. If I don't do it, it's not great. Like I feel on edge, and people start pointing it out to me too. So we seem to have that in common, as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that, for anyone who's just starting or 60 minutes or 45 minutes seems like
Mm.
such a long time and it's hard to imagine, but you build up to it quickly, right? Like you can
Yeah.
build up to it from 20 minutes or using the app to then doing it full 45 or 60. I haven't done 2 hours. That seems intense,
Mm.
but I it seems less crazy to me after
Mm.
doing it for 1 hour and hearing people's reactions to it. So yeah, I'll have to give that a try.
Yeah, for sure. And like I really want to do like like the 10-day, like a 10-day retreat, like
Vipassana.
yes, exactly. Yes. But obviously now with COVID and all, hopefully next year, um, I'll be able to do it for real.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that as well.
Hmm.
And COVID was just like something that stopped me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Man, there's like, I have like this like catalog of questions, but I'm
Rip
I'm
them.
just like, yeah, no, because I was just gonna say like I'm gonna like because you literally said on one of your podcasts that like the challenge of like being prepared and having your questions on the one hand, but like really like just going with the flow and
Mm-hmm.
just like feeling out the other person, going where they want to go and having like an actual chat. And yeah, man. So, I wasn't technically planning on talking about meditation, but here we go.
That's part of the fun. And I was actually watching or going through my notes on Malcolm Gladwell talking about
Mm.
interviewing. And he said, how could you know what the other person is going to say that's interesting before you start the conversation? You can't. And so that's the benefit of getting lost in the moment. Obviously, you have to prepare as well, because then you can direct it in specific ways to get some insights. But it is such a balance. And it's what I'm
Yeah.
constantly trying to figure out as the
Yeah.
host. And it's changing
Yeah.
too based on the person you speak to.
Yeah.
It's not an
Yeah.
easy job being in your position, my man,
Yeah.
but it's it's an exciting challenge for sure.
For sure. For sure. And like, I mean, I started the podcast for entirely selfish reasons, like,
Yeah.
getting to talk to awesome people and like, this is fun.
Hell yeah. I did the same exact thing. That's why I started.
Yeah. So let's go back to your writing for a second. Because you said initially you were starting out writing but you felt like you weren't able to really um, translate your, your love and your, passion through writing. And then you ended up, channeling it, via the podcast. How do you have the self-awareness to realize this?
This is a great question. And it was just a matter of looking at the responses of my work, right? So I was doing the work of writing twice a week for weeks on end. And, after 3 months, you get a good gauge of like, how's it going? It's 100 days. If you've been doing something for 100 days, you get an idea of like, is this working? Is this not? And I just wasn't getting the response that I expected, the response of people. And maybe the writing wasn't that good. Maybe I wasn't doing a good job promoting it. It could have been any number of things, but I knew something had to change. I knew I enjoyed writing tremendously, but is that something that people really enjoyed reading? I'm constantly in this process of looking for feedback. And it's why when I do my podcast, I tell people like, please give me feedback for the episode and do it at Hey Danny Miranda on Twitter, because then I'll be able to understand where I'm going wrong. And so I wasn't getting much of that feedback. And when you're not getting much feedback, you really have to think, okay, am I doing something wrong? If I continued on this path, is that going to lead to success? And I wasn't saying I was never going to write anymore. It was like, how can I better express my talents? I believe that, I was blessed in some capacity to like use myself as a way to bring out some of these things. And I wasn't able to do it through the written word. So maybe I was able to do it through audio. Maybe I was able to do it through video. Just a matter of testing. And I guess to answer your question, it's like, you have to be willing to fail and fail at writing, in the sense of like, no one's reading your stuff. No one's enjoying it. And I'm being consistent. So that's not the issue. Maybe the medium's the issue. Maybe the written word is the issue. You don't know until you try something else. So that's kind of the thought process.
And then gotcha. And then the follow-up to that would be like, how many episodes into the podcast do you feel like, yes, this is working, I want to double down on this?
Yeah. So for the podcast, I set the goal of 100 episodes. Like, I'm going to do 100 episodes. Like, that's it. And I set the same goal basically for the writing as well, for the blog posts. But I mean, I would say probably after the releasing the first few episodes, I knew that people were really enjoying it and connecting with it in a way that the writing wasn't. And I was really enjoying it. I'd never done audio of any kind. I never did any audio editing or anything like that. But people were messaging me in spades, like, this is really helpful. Thank you for this. You're doing a great job with that. And I was like, oh man, maybe I'm good at this. Like, maybe I'm connecting in a way that I wasn't with the writing. And it was definitely easier for me, right? Because I started off with, when I launched the podcast, I don't know how many followers I had, but I had some audience on Twitter for feedback. And that's a huge bump too, of like getting feedback. If I'm writing all these articles and I'm not getting feedback from 6,000 people, 7,000 people, then something might go wrong. Then I might be doing something wrong. If I'm doing the podcast and people are responding to it, that's a sign that things are working, that I'm doing the right thing. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but it's certainly a benefit and a help to have people who are interacting with your work nonstop, and so that you can then pivot if needed or go in a different direction.
And to follow up on that, if you're a new creator starting out and you maybe don't have 6,000 people to give you feedback on your work, what will you say to that, creator?
I would say to that creator, you need to make friends with other people who are similar to you in your journey. So, okay, what do you enjoy? Let's say it's a podcast. You like podcasting. So then let's say you have under 1,000 followers. Okay. You find 5 to 10 other people who also have podcasts that you enjoy that are on that journey together. And you also try to find friends and who have been doing the podcast longer, who have more followers, whatever. But those people are going to be really receptive to you because they're in the same boat as you and they're on that same mission. And if you could find people on the same mission as you can then get that feedback, right? And how it starts is being interested in that person's work first, not expecting you to send that person a message saying like, hey, give me feedback for my podcast. No, it's like you reach out to them and say like, I love your podcast because X, Y, and Z. And if there's anything I could do to help in any way, let me know. So I did this back in 2018 when I was drop shipping and doing e-commerce for the first time. I was just making friends with people who also were on that journey, that similar journey. And I made friends with people one step ahead of me. I made friends with as many people as I could. But to think of it like that, like you really want feedback for your work. And the best way to do that is to find friends on that same mission.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think of what I've been doing, which is Ship 30. Mm-hmm. And I know you're friends with Dickie, so you probably know what I'm talking about.
Hell yeah. I also did Ship 30 and Dickie is a great friend. And yeah, it's a great program for that reason of like connecting people who are also on that mission together.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And if I'm not mistaken, aren't you doing David Perel's Rite of Passage at the moment?
Yes, sir. I am. I just finished a meeting with it, like a group session with them right before this interview. So yeah, it's going really well and I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Cause I was going to ask you about your experiences with that because I'm doing I guess after Ship 30, they started this Right the Ship, which is kind of like, I guess you could call it like the light budget version of Rite of Passage.
I love it. Yeah.
So we're kind of like on a similar journey here. And I'd just like to, talk about, your learnings and experiences thus far.
Yeah. So for Rite of Passage, I really like the community aspect of it. And what I really love about what David does and what the program does is like the breakout rooms are just magical in the sense of you learn about this stuff and then you speak to someone about it. I've never really had that experience with breakout rooms and doing all this on Zoom. I know a lot of people are, but for me, it's the first time doing it. So I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm communicating now and having this conversation with someone I never would have spoken to about things we're both interested in. This is awesome. So yeah, that's a little bit about Rite of Passage. How have you found the Ship 30 for 30 post program? What have been some of your learnings?
Yeah, so it literally just started 2-3 days ago. So super fresh, super new. So far, what I love about it is like Nicholas Cole, the viral writer that started this. Exactly. So he does a fantastic job just taking, like thousands of hours of, learnings of like, condensed like his experiences writing and puts them into like those small, digestible chunks. Yeah. When like you really aren't like, I'm not paying, necessarily for, the knowledge because knowledge is free. Like all of the stuff you can look up on the internet. I am paying for, obviously the coaching, the one-on-one, and I'm paying for the group. Like you said, like we also have the breakout rooms and it's like all together. But much more importantly, I'm paying for like him condensing the information. And like, yesterday was all about headlines, and it was literally 2 hours of like how to write, snappy headlines that, capture attention. And, basically his learnings from like, those 10,000, maybe even more hours of like writing, he's presenting in like a 2-hour session. That's what I'm paying for.
It's valuable. That's really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I have a good one. What would you say is your biggest mistake looking back in, your journey as a podcaster?
As a podcaster. So past 6 months, what has been my biggest mistake? That's a good question. I would say my biggest mistake initially was not doing research for the conversations and just thinking that I could be like Joe Rogan and just wing it and just have a conversation because I've had a million conversations before and been like, oh, I know this person. I know their bio. I know what they're about. I could just talk to them for an hour. But there's a real performance going on with the podcast that you don't realize. It's behind the scenes, like you as the actor, you as the person who is guiding the conversation in such a way that's really important. So I totally underestimated that aspect of it. And once I started taking research really seriously, it was how I was able to separate myself because I was able to go and dive really deep into someone's background to make them surprised that I would even think to ask them that question. And it was like, they were like, what is going on? Like, how did you know that? And in some ways, you can almost know the person better than themselves because they've evolved past that version of themselves that you're bringing up from 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And you just uncovered it yesterday. So you were thinking about it before that person was. And it blows people's minds usually when I bring up something from someone's distant past.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes obviously skill to do that and work. Which brings me kind of to my next point, which is like how you prep for your podcast. Cause I think you're doing 3 or even 4 recordings a week these days. So that is a lot of recordings and, a lot of prep. So how do you do it all?
A lot of the people I invite on, I've been fans of and been following for a long time. So I am aware of their background. I'm aware of the nuances of the things they say. But for someone who I'm coming in completely cold with, it happens a few times. I'm really going deep on the 4th or 5th or 10th page of Google. I'm going into the Twitter advanced search tool and figuring out what are their most popular tweets from 5 years ago. I am something that I'm starting to do and that I'm going to ask more in the future. I haven't done this yet, but ask someone close to that person if they have any stories or anything that that person doesn't get asked often is like an interesting one I'm thinking about. Someone passed that along to me. And then just really trying to put myself in their shoes, thinking about how do they see the world and how would I see the world if I was this person? And so that involves going through podcasts with that person. What are the things that they normally speak about? What are the things that are often on their mind? What is the lens they see the world? If I can figure out all those things, then I can better ask them questions and better ask, put myself in their shoes, and it will lead to a better podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And to dig in a bit more into your process, do you because I know you're really into self-optimization and optimizing performance, self-improvement, that whole thing. Do you have a set schedule as far as like, this is when I do my cold outreach, this is when I do my research, this is when I batch recordings? How do you go about it?
Yeah. So I have one rule mainly, and that is I don't record podcasts before noon or 1 p.m. normally because and I'm in the Eastern time zone. So that's beneficial for me because, Pacific time is behind me and Europe is ahead. So it's like, it's the perfect middle ground. But so I have that rule of like 12 p.m. and onward. And I don't really have any other rules for recording and researching and reaching out to guests because I just do it when it feels natural. Like I'll be going through someone's Twitter and then I'll be like, oh wow, that person would be so interesting. I'd love to talk to that person. Or I'd start reading a book and be like, wow, I'd love to talk to the author about this. So it's just a constant following my curiosity is how I approach reaching out to guests and doing all that. And like one story that I'll share with you is, I tweeted about, you know, something about going inward, right? And that day I looked up the word inward and I was like, what does this mean? And the first thing that pops up is this book by this guy named Young Pueblo. And, I just looked at the book and said, oh, this looks cool because the book is called Inward. And so it was the first Google search result. And then the same day, my friend Ryan on Twitter starts talking about Inward by Young Pueblo and how he loves this book. And because of that, I then reached out to the author after reading the book and was like, wow, I really love this book. And it just was me following my curiosity. It was just me letting go to the moment. If I had said, I'm only reaching out to guests at this time or that time, I might have missed that opportunity because I was what might not have been following my curiosity. So I like to follow my curiosity whenever possible. It's how the podcast started, was me just following my curiosity. And yeah, that's a little bit about my process.
Yeah. So seems like you're able to strike a balance between going with the flow, but also, having those, whatever, 3-4 recordings every week.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a juxtaposition, right? Because you don't want to be so going with the flow that you don't have any structure, but at the same time, you don't want to be so structured that you miss the flow and creativity of life. Like everything, and like the interview itself, it's such a balance.
Oh yeah. It's like maybe one question, because even I get asked this, and I'm just starting out as a podcaster, which is cold email, right? So people are asking me like, yeah, how you go about cold emailing people? Do you like, handcraft this, immaculate, perfect like cold email, or do you just like bang them out just like a salesperson? And maybe tell us a bit about your cold email process.
Yeah. So my cold email, and I'll also group in DMs and messages,
Yeah.
is the like this. Whenever possible, I like to make it as personal as possible. So, I mean, I always make it as personal as possible, but some of the things that I do is like the first sentence of the cold email is about how that person has impacted or affected my life. And if I can show an example, even better. So if I'm reaching out to Gary Vaynerchuk, be like, hey, Gary, I've been following you since 2009. And that time that you said this led me to do that. And thank you for that. So that's the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it is like, show your credibility or your background. Why should they care about your podcast specifically? For me, I'm able to say, the Danny Miranda Podcast is a top 1.5% podcast in the world. And these people have been on. So it's a way of telling them like, look, there's some credibility behind me. It's not just any podcast. This is a specific thing. And then the third thing I say is like, no worries if you can't come on. I don't take it personally. And just keep it short, keep it sweet. And another thing that I like to do is sometimes send a video message that lets the person know it's really personal. Like no one else could possibly be getting this. I talk about them in the video, talk to them directly, and that gives them a feeling for my energy and who I am. So yeah, those are some tips about cold outreach.
Nice. Thank you for that, for sure. So I saw you just crossed the 50,000 downloads mark. Congrats.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Very, very epic. And I also saw, and I'm going to like grill you on that a little, that you'd said to like not make money with that podcast in the like foreseeable future, and to like kind of like the whole Tim Ferriss approach, right? To like grow it,
Yes.
grow it big first. And now you went 180 on that, I saw.
When really smart people say things to you, it sticks. And Harry Dry is one of those really smart people. Harry Dry is of marketingexamples.com. I believe that's the domain. I should probably check that out if he's my first sponsor. But anyway, Harry Dry is a legend. He's a brilliant dude. I'm on record saying that he will be a billionaire someday. That's my prediction for Harry Dry. And I interviewed him in episode 31 of my podcast, and he was really getting on me about making some money off the podcast because he really thinks there's a lot of value there. And I said to him, like, look, this is the approach that I'm following, the Tim Ferriss approach, build it up big and then try to monetize later. And he's like, well, you could look at it like that, or you could look at it like this is something that could help you make a full-time living. I said, okay, Harry, like if that was the case, I would aim to make $2,000 or $3,000 from the podcast. There's, I would say 12 episodes a month. So if there's 12 episodes a month and I'm making $2,500 from the podcast, that is $200 an episode roughly. And he was like, okay, I'll pay it $200 for one episode. And so he sponsored one episode of the podcast. And I was like, okay, Harry, fair play. If you really believe in me enough to pay $200 for one episode of the podcast, God bless you. Thank you. I appreciate you. You put your money where your mouth is. And yeah, that's how it came to be. I mean, Harry Dry's really smart. Tim Ferriss is really smart. It's like they're both probably right in different ways in different situations. And because I trust Harry, I mean, I'm going with his gut on it and his intuition.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds totally fair. And also good on you for not being like stuck in this one, belief, because, like life is dynamic, and
Yes.
and also obviously like, you're no Tim Ferriss yet. So, he 100%. Also had the unfair advantage of like starting with like 2 million, unique whatever Definitely. Visitors a month. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just a constant process of testing your assumptions and learning from people smarter than you. Like Harry Dry is certainly smarter than me, and just thinking about why does he believe this? Why is he's suggesting me to do that? And so, yeah, that's how the sponsorship came to be. That's how I went and reversed my thinking on that topic.
You feel like, again, makes total sense. Do you feel like with your podcast that you're starting to have different interests or maybe find a bit of a niche for yourself? Or do you feel like you're just as all over the place as you were in the beginning?
I feel like I'm just as all over the place as I was in the beginning. I like having so many different people on, and I'm very content to let somebody box me into a niche in 5 years or 3 years after I've put out all this content. They'll be like, oh yeah, he's the X guy after I've done and put out all these episodes. Cause I could easily say like, listen, I am the meditating guy, or I am this guy, and only I am the writing guy and only talk to writers and only talk to meditators and only talk to whatever. But instead I'm going all over the place, letting my interests guide me, letting my curiosity guide me, and, let someone else come in and say, oh, he's that guy. For example, I mean, I'm kind of following the Joe Rogan model in that aspect where it's like, Joe Rogan could have just interviewed comedians, or he could have just interviewed jujitsu people, or he could have interviewed just MMA people. Like there's so many different facets to Joe Rogan, and we know him as Joe Rogan, but he could have taken the avenue of like faster growth and just attacked comedians or mushrooms or whatever, like DMT. So I like to take that approach, and I'm no Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan was no Joe Rogan 10 years ago. He was just a comedian, a comic. So yeah, it's a long-term approach. It's a long-term model, and let somebody else come in and say, you're that guy after I've put in the work for X amount of years and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Cheers to that. I was just wondering, because that would have been so dope for you also. Would you have done in-person interviews if we didn't have COVID?
100%. I want to do in-person interviews. I want to have my own studio where I could bring people in and talk to them face to face. It's a different energy. And it'll probably be a different skill that I slightly have to learn in a new way, because there's some, small differences. But I think it's so exciting. The thought of me having my own studio in 5 years and 10
Mhm.
years, if I
Mhm.
could just stick with it and build the podcast up. I don't know if that will happen, but it's an aspiration for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like, man, like you're really big um on the visualization, on the,
Yes.
manifesting stuff. And
Hmm.
I know like you're about this in like a very no bullshit, actual like doing shit kind of way,
I am.
because you're also doing 75 hard. So I know you're legit. Um, like you've actually done the entire program I saw.
Yes.
Um,
The Live Hard program.
yes, exactly. Um, so since I'm still in phase one, and for people that don't know about this is kind of like a mental toughness challenge where, mostly you do very hard physical exercise over like an extended period of time, and there's certain rules to it. And then if you want to Google it, it's all over the internet. So but like talk to me about visualization, because I feel like this is so misunderstood, and I personally do it too. Let's hear it.
I have this folder, right? That talks about the person I want to be, the values I want to have, the the types of things that I want to experience, the character traits, the people I want to emulate. I have this folder, right? So I created this folder in 2019, September 2019. I started to read it every day. And I called the folder Danny 2.0. And by March of 2020, my parents started calling me Danny 2.0 because I had changed so much without any knowledge of the folder. So I was reading and visualizing this document every day. It's probably 10 pages. And my parents calling me something else, the same name of the folder, because I had changed so much, was mind blowing to me and made me think and realize, like, wow, visualization really does work. I changed so much, and I changed to a person that I wanted to be and was proud of. So that was pretty much the okay, this works. Let's just do it. Let's surrender to the process and just get to it. Because I still do the process to this day of like reading the folder 3 times a day. My goals and have changed since September of 2009, and where what I am visualizing is different, but the process is the same.
Mm.
How do you do visualization?
Um, I do like at the end of my meditation, I think of I actually changed this up recently because I used to do like longer term goals, like like I'll have, like an 8-figure net worth within 10 years, stuff like that. Um, which like I will have, but it's kind of like, what about right now though? And I've
Mhm.
broken it down. Like I can really do 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, those sort of increments I can do really well, because it's like, like we've been in lockdown for 6 months. Like 6 months ago, shops were open. Now they're closed. They're probably going to open up next month again. Right. So
Mm.
I know 6 months, it's kind of like, it is a lot longer than just like a couple of weeks, but I can grasp it, I can fathom it like in my mind. Um, so I like to do those 6 months goals and also 3 months. And it's very like it's a whole like keeping the promises you've made to yourself, right?
Mhm.
So, and with every day I get more like belief in myself and self-confidence because I'm doing hard shit. And
Yes.
it's the whole like, bitch, it's midnight, I still haven't hit my goals, so I don't get to go to sleep, just yet.
Yes.
And that really fucks with you, especially when you see your Aura ring score in
Yes.
the morning. um and then you start to rationalize, no, but if I get more sleep, then like the podcast recording will be better, so actually I should go back to bed. And but then that little bitch voice, you just have to slap it. um so long story short, so about visualization, I said sort of like a worst case, realistic case, and a best case outcome, which is like, for instance, with the podcast, it's like yourself, I've committed to doing 100 episodes no matter what. um Worst case outcome is like, I'll be a better interviewer at
Mhm.
like whatever, like 6 months from now. or whenever I'll be done with 100 recordings. Because even on that, I'm flexible. Right now I'm doing 1 a week, but I might do 2 a week. I might do, depends on other things. I'm totally flex on that, but I will have to do 100 episodes. Like I'm doing 100 episodes. Like that's a non-negotiable. So worst case, I'll be a better interviewer, right? Realistic case, I'll be a better interviewer, and I'll be, building my brand online, and it'll be great, marketing for, Gabriel Horvat. Best case, all of the above, plus I'm making money from it too. So this is kind of like how I see it. So either way, it's a win. And it's like this whole systems over goals. The Dilbert creator talks about this a lot. I've forgotten his name.
Scott Adams. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Where it's like no matter the outcome, it's a win. And so I visualize this, and I visualize actually the process of me, writing those cold emails, getting whatever, like I'm kind of like visualizing the worst case scenario the most, funny enough, where it's like, my cold email response rate is actually really high, surprisingly, but like I'm visualizing a much lower response rate because I'm like, I'm okay with 1 in 100, I'm okay with 1 in 100. Like it's not 1 in 100, but I'm okay with that. And because again, like recently it's been like 1 in 4 or something, like crazy high. And that kind of almost fucks with me, because I'm like, I don't want it to be that high, because then it's like, oh, I only have to write, 5 emails all week and I'm good because I have so many podcast schedule. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's just about committing to the process, right? And the reason why it might fuck with you is because, you want the process to be what the process is, but the process is sometimes better than you expect it to be. And, you have to, winning is sometimes more difficult than losing, in the sense of when you're winning, when everyone wants to talk to you, you then say like, oh, I'm winning. I'm on top of the world. I got this cold email outreach done. I'm the best. I'm amazing. And then you're like, oh, wait, I stopped sending cold emails because I just thought I had it done and I could figure it out. So I think that's why the process is so important, of like, okay, I'm going to send 100 emails, or, oh, I'm going to do 100 episodes, whatever it is for you, however you do it. And then just like keeping an eye on the results, but not finishing your process until you finish the process. I think that's so important. And it's cool that you are crushing it with the cold emails, man. Keep it up.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And, I want to be cognizant of your time. Do you have any sort of final thoughts?
No, man, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate the conversation. It's very free flowing. It wasn't, like an interview. I felt more like a conversation, which is cool. And I like that. And yeah, man, thank you for doing what you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And, we'll link a bunch of your stuff, we'll link it all below in the show notes, of course. And thank you so much for coming on, Danny Miranda.
Hell yeah. Thank you, my man. It's been a lot of fun.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or Spotify, and share the episode with someone you know. It would really help me out a ton. New podcast coming out every Monday. See you next week.